Bauhaus. This is a term used often in the watch world, like taking inspiration from the Bauhaus art school or that Bauhaus design. But when it comes to watch brand, there is only one watch brand that comes to our mind, and that is Nomos. To me, Nomos owns that principle quite well, and it's great and all, but when it comes to buying one, things are not actually that simple. The cheapest one that you can find starts from 1,300 euros, and last time I checked, I actually didn't feel that comfortable spending so much money on one. Well, Primitivehaus, the brand that we're going to talk about today, have this beauty right here that comes in a huge selection of colors, a 2-year warranty, and the best part, it costs about $1,000 less. It's called the TimeKeeper, and what I like about it is that you know the principles behind the design, and it doesn't look like any homage of any sorts. Granted, I did mention Nomos a couple of times, but to me, the TimeKeeper, yes, that's what it's called, it's its own watch. And all of that I just mentioned for just a little over $300. Links down below to the website if you want to check them out. Next to that subscribe button, which I really appreciate you clicking. But it's not just the design. In true Bauhaus style, the brand doesn't overcomplicate things. It does the basics right. For instance, the packaging. The watch comes in this leather imitation travel pouch that fits 2 watches. It's nothing fancy and it's not the best quality, but I don't actually want it to be. I can reuse it and I can actually store stuff in it. In here, you'll find the metal warranty card with a barcode, 2 straps included. The trapdoor is a soft rubber out of the box, and the other one is a 2-piece NATO, which again, it's not the best, but for the money that I'm paying for it, I'm actually happy that I have it, and it's actually perfectly usable. What I do like about all these elements, in fact, that is none of these stand out in quality, but are perfectly usable in the whole offering. Now let's go back to the watch. $300-ish gets you enough watch to have fun and possibly to have this as your only watch, and it's actually packed full of goodies itself. So let's take a closer look at the specs and the dimensions and kind of touch up a little bit on the things that kind of stand out. The price, like mentioned, is $329 according to the website. The case diameter is 38 millimeters. It actually does wear like a 38, but looks a little bigger on the wrist because of that whole dial design. Whole dial design. The lug is 44 on the case, but we have 50 on the bracelet with the male end links, and to me, honestly, 50 is usually a little bit bigger, but it does feel like the sweet spot. Thickness is 12.3 millimeters with a flat sapphire crystal, but it does sit a little taller on the wrist. Another important thing to mention is that we do have a screw down crown with 200 meters stated water resistance, which is pretty much overkill for everyday use, but a good addition to have for everyday use if you look at it like that. This size up to my 6.3-inch wrist on the metal strap weighs 130 grams. So on the wrist, it feels exactly like a 38, but looks like a slightly bigger watch, like I mentioned, and that's because to me that bezel is not that big and it doesn't take a lot of visual real estate, and you have that all a dial design. That's why I think this would look well on a 7.5-inch plus wrist also. I do think that the screw down case back does stick out a little bit, and despite the fact that this is only 12.3 millimeters thick, it looks a little tall on the wrist. It actually sits a little tall on the wrist. But again, looks can be deceiving, and also looks being the key word here, because once again, that 130 gram weight sweet spot is actually very nice distributed on the wrist, and certainly you don't notice the weight throughout the day. Now that even distribution is carried on even when you have it on the other straps. I know this sounds weird, but I do change watches around 3 times a day. Please don't judge me. And you do notice the difference in weight distribution from watch to watch. And in this case, you could actually tell when I had a heavier watch on the wrist. So many things for $300, you expect to get something more in the lines of average and mediocre at best in terms of finishing, but you'd be very wrong. Same Bauhaus approach here function used as best for styling method, a combination of polished and brushed finishing, and no fancy chamfered edges, and none of that stuff, and everything is executed to a level that just suit the watch. I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't need to be anything fancy. You don't find yourself asking throughout the day, oh my god, why isn't my watch, why doesn't it have chamfered edges, or I'm not going to miss them. But again, you do appreciate when a watch looks well. But on a more serious note, the level of simplicity works, and if you ask me, that crown at the 4 makes all the difference and just adds that gentle layer of sophistication that it needed. And speaking of that crown, if you find yourself setting this once every 2-3 days, just be mindful of your nails, as the bezel would get in the way of that crown a little bit. Now, to me, this is what I would call a workaround, because the crown is the right size aesthetically, but the placement is just in an unnatural spot when you're trying to twist, and if you have big fingers and you have to put it back. So the dial, this is where all the Bauhausness happens. Yes, I've used the word Bauhausness. Clean and simple design, just as you'd expect from the style they're going for here. It's perfectly legible, and I love how the style of the hands blends in quite nicely with the font used on the numerals. The crystal doesn't offer much glare, and you even get to see the 24-hour numerals hiding in plain sight on the outer edge. I suppose it's called Type-A because it's supposed to be a flieger, but there are some field watch elements in there as well, where you can see them on the outer edge. To me, this is nor one or the other. My mind doesn't clearly go to either of those two styles when I look at this. To me, this is just a beautiful looking watch that doesn't cost a lot of money. It's a great looking dial. Instead of the triangle at the 12, you have the 00, which should still give you an indication of which way is up if you find yourself inverted in a plane and you need your watch to find which way is up. My variant has the pink second subdial at the 6, which again contributes to the personality of the watch, and let's not forget, it contributes to the Bauhaus design. I think I may have said Bauhaus at least 10 times in the last 5 minutes, if not more. For the Lume, we have 15 layers of BGW9 on the hands and the numerals, and let's just say it lasts enough. There isn't much surface on the numerals, and it's not actually that super strong in that department, but if you look back at what I said at the start of the video, if you balance this across the board with the cost of the watch being spread out on the entire watch, this is not actually the worst thing that can happen. So now you ask me, George, what if I need to go to the toilet at night and I still want to tell the time? Would this be useful? I would say yes, but only for a short pee. Don't stay too long, or you might not have enough Lume to come back or to know what time it is. Let's talk about the movement. In this, we have a very funky Miyota, the 82S5, which is technically skeletonized, and it has the small seconds hands function. The skeletonized portion we cannot see, but we can see the small seconds hands, and it's all glory. From the specs online, I understand that there are 2 versions of this, one that hacks and one that doesn't hack, and luckily this one does hack. Wouldn't be particularly bothered if it didn't, unless it had terrible accuracy, but it does run quite well. The accuracy thing is not the case here. This runs at plus 10 seconds per day, which is well within the stated tolerances of the movement. I don't have much to add here because I understand why they use the movement because of that small seconds hands function, which is properly justified. Would I have wanted a Seiko NH series movement? Not really. I do find that they are quite similar movements, especially if you get one that hacks, and you won't have problems with any of them depending on whatever you get in the long run. The TimeKeeper comes standard on a 3-on-6L stainless steel oyster style bracelet, which again for the price is actually decent quality. Actually, I would be inclined to say better than decent. The same simple approach was taken here, but with a twist. Do not reinvent the wheel if someone else did it already. So we have screw pins to adjust with male end links, and also quick release spring bars. To add to all of this, we have an on-the-fly system that is simple and very, very efficient. Now, in this case, given the borrowed inspiration, I would be the first one to criticize that on-the-fly system since it is borrowed, but this works like a treat. Call me crazy, but to me this is almost the budget complete bracelet. It has everything that works and it's not overly complicated at all. What more could you want on a $300 watch? You do get a couple of more straps in the box, like I did mention at the start. Again, spring bars for quick changing in all of them. I mean, you literally have everything you need, and the straps, the two additional straps, are not the best, but they're not the worst. Like Seiko will charge you $1,200 for a watch with a pressed clasp, so no. Conclusion. So the TimeKeeper Type-A is the first watch from Primitivehaus, and I have to admit they pretty much smashed it in my book. It's pretty hard in the current climate to bring in a watch, especially with so many micro brands, and the competition is huge. Now, their approach on the whole Bauhaus design, functional style was obviously spot on. They took it and they ran with it. They kept things simple and they did everything right. I think that might put people off could be the name. From my perspective, yes and no. I do think that it suits the design and it has its place in the whole quirkiness. So to me, the TimeKeeper Type-A is a total winner. So that was it for me, guys. That was the review of the TimeKeeper Type-A from Primitivehaus. And let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the watch, the brand. Thank you very, very much for watching. Click a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, so it really helps me out. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.